FVGs, in other words, fair value gaps, or in other words, an imbalance, right? So before we get started, I want you to think of it think of you drawing with a crayon or coloring with a crayon on a piece of paper when you were a kid, right? And you're doing it in a fast motion, right? I don't know if you remember, but it would leave gaps when you were moving the crayon too quickly. So picture the market impulsively moving in a bearish movement, which means selling off, or moving in a bullish movement, which means buying off. Now, if it's moving in either one of those directions in an impulsive manner, it's going to leave gaps, right? And those gaps are called fair value gaps. So what ends up happening is market is magnetically attracted to those areas. At some point, the market's going to come back and fill those gaps, right? It could be days, hours, weeks. It's just at some point it'll come back and fill it, right? So let me go ahead and demonstrate real quick, right? So let's go ahead and find a nice example. Okay, I'm on the 4-hour chart right now. Let me find y'all an example real quick. All right, so for example, right here, right? You can see this impulsive bullish movement, right? But specifically this candle. So you take your tool and you basically draw it out on the end of this top wick and the top of this bottom wick, right? And I want you to take a look at this. So the market created this gap when it was moving in this impulsive bullish movement, right? And at that moment, it never came back. It took a few days to even come back. Let's see how long it actually took. Hold on. So from October 14th until November 28th is when it finally filled that gap. So as you can see, let me show you real quick. The tool comes to where this top wick, this bottom ends, and this bottom wick's top ends, right? And you can see that the market kept moving in a bullish movement and eventually made its way back to fill that gap. Now let me show you another example so you can see. Over here, right? Same shit happened. So as you can see, it's the bottom of this top wick and the top part of this bottom wick, right? Because the bullish movement's happening right here. But this candle specifically, right? And specific, as you can see, market kept moving up and then at some point eventually retraced back to fill that gap and kept moving in a bullish movement. I can find another one right here. I just spotted another one. So from here to here, right? As you can see, this engulfing candle, market didn't automatically come back down to that area. It took a few hours, right? Finally came back, filled, and continued up, right? And you can see that this also works with downtrend candles. Let me show you an example there. So momentum to the downside. So right here's an example. As you can see, it's the bottom part of this top candle and the top part of this bottom candle, right? There we are. You can see market sold off and then went into a bullish movement and eventually made its way back to fill that gap before selling back off. And it did it right here again. So you can see momentum to the downside, and then it starts moving back up to fill that gap, continues down. So you can see the market comes back to these areas, these gaps that it creates, right? It might not come back right away, like over here where it took weeks, but sometimes it takes hours, sometimes it takes days. So let's go over here to where price action's actually at right now, right? So here I can see another example right here. So you can see upward movement with momentum, didn't come down right away, kept going up, and eventually came back down to fill before continuing in a bullish movement, right? Okay, over here's another example. Let me zoom in. So right here, downward momentum, right? As you can see, downward momentum, right? Momentum in the in a bearish direction, right? Or whatever. Tripping up my words right now. All right, anyways, you see it sell off. It doesn't come back to that gap that it creates yet, right? It sells off on February 3rd. On February 8th is when it finally fills that gap again. Another example over here. Massive sell-off. Market sells off, comes back, fills, sells off again, comes back again, sells off, comes back, fills again. This helps me basically visualize kind of what direction the market could head in, right? Because here's another example, dude. These are just all over the place. So right here, right? Upward movement, market kept going up, filled that gap, came back down, filled this gap before moving back up. And here's another example over here. Right? Downward movement. Kept going down, bought off to fill this gap. But see, it eventually comes back to fill these gaps. That's all that matters. And if you guys don't that's all I want you guys to get out of this video. So right here, right? At some point, market is going to come back to fill this gap that it's created right here. Okay, today's date is February 8th, 2022. All right, mark my words. At some point, price action is going to come back down to this gap and fill it. But that's basically all I wanted to show you guys in this video. It's just a demonstration of FVGs. And I guess just rewatch this video over and over again until you get it. Feel free to, DM me on Instagram at Avila Irving 215. That's at A V as in Victor, ILA IRV as in Victor, ING 215. And then again, you guys have a blessed day.